So at this point, if you're watching video 3 here, you know you need to take a math placement test after watching that first video and following its suggestions to talk to an advisor and testing services. You found out in the second video that tutors are available to help you even though you're not a student yet. And you are now wanting to think about, okay, how am I supposed to prepare? In the fourth video, you're going to see the actual practice test items. But before that, we want to get some perspective, which is that this is about reviewing, not trying to skip levels and learn new skills, simply because you want a healthy first term and to be confident in your first level rather than to be doing too much. And so for that, you're going to need to have a sense of, is the level I'm registering for, or that's my goal for placement, the right level for me based on the classes I've had before. So with that, let's look at the math series. This is basically the equivalent to Algebra 1 in high school here. Math 60 is essentially your high school Algebra 1. Geometry is a lot of what we do in 65. It's very similar to your high school geometry, but of course, algebra is going to continue in there too. Intermediate algebra is probably like your Algebra 2. And then when I was in high school, they called this Math 111, 112 stuff college algebra trigonometry. But the names vary, and this is not meant to be 100% accurate. It's more just a general sense. And but let's run through a placement situation to put in context this level stuff. You went to your advisor. They said, you're going to need Math 65 because you're doing a 2-year Associates of Applied Science to get a certificate in an applied science. And that one's Math 65 or Math 58. Notice a lot of programs will have options. You could do the blue algebra track, or you could do the orange quantitative reasoning track. But let's say, having talked to your advisor, you know you need Math 65 or 58, but you went and took the placement test even without preparing, and very brave of you, and you placed in at Math 10. That is a very common occurrence. It does not necessarily mean Math 10 is where you should start. It's a great class. It could be the right place to start. But if you have had algebra before, or even beyond that, and you've got, solid multiplication facts, good on paper organization, your handwriting, you don't mind showing your steps, and with a little bit of negative numbers review, you could probably fare okay in algebra, then your goal should be to raise your placement test score maybe to 60/58, because those are an equivalent placement score. That is the same threshold score when you take your math placement test says, hey, you have now placed into 60 or 58, meaning depending on what your track requires, you can now take the first class in that track. You don't do both tracks, you do one track or the other, and that's where the advisor comes in, and knowing your options and finding out about these classes comes in. Math 58 is a 6-credit class, so keep in mind that it's going to be about half of your class schedule. Math 60 and 65 are 4-credit classes, but there's 2 of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, your advisor's your expert on all this stuff. So your placement could be to just bump up a couple levels. And in that video, the next video about the practice test, you're going to see which part of it is going to get you ready to place up into 60, as opposed to, let's say you have a different situation. Let's say you are, your program requires 111 or 105. Maybe you're doing the Associate of Arts transfer degree, and it's going to say a college level math class, which is 100 level like this. And let's say you placed in at 60. And you've had 60 and you had Algebra 2 in high school and geometry. And so you're like, maybe I'm ready for 95 here. And so your goal would be to review some algebra. On the practice test video, you're going to see that there's an arithmetic clump And then there's an algebra clump, and that's basically going to be, that's your algebra clump right there. And you, if you show you know those on the placement test, it's going to bump you up, say, to the 95 or the 111. The third clump is the advanced math clump on the practice tests, and it's going to be putting you somewhere along the 111 and above series. I will not waste your time and talk too much about details of these courses, but that's just to say, hey, there's a series, there's really two series. And since the diagram is here, I'll just also mention if your degree says statistics, you can get to that in either track. 111 leads to 243 or 105 leads to 243. That's all I'll say at this point. But there's a lot to know about math classes, and the format matters in person versus on campus. In all cases, plan to have a lot of homework time. If you are a busy person who's not going to necessarily be able to give this all the attention it needs, then you definitely don't want to start at like a level that is just beyond what you've had before. You should really start at a level that you feel like, okay, I know a lot of that already. That would get me oriented. I'm now going to be in a comfortable term getting used to the college requirement, which is we're going to go fast. In 10 weeks plus finals week, we're basically doing what you did in a whole year of high school. You know, this Algebra 1 in 60, for example, that was about a year of high school, and you're doing it in 10 weeks plus finals week in one of our quarters. Same thing with 65 and all of these levels. This is one quarter, 10 weeks to do a lot of the math you would have had more time for in high school, but we do streamline it a little bit. All right, enough said on that. Definitely watch the next video. Now that you've identified which level you're trying to get to, watch the next video about which levels correspond to which practice tests.